Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. It's not RSA, and you're not there. Either am I. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimel. Happy Monday to you. It's good to be back in the office after a week and change out in San Francisco for the security industry's annual pilgrimage to RSAC Conference, as it's called now. This year's RSAC Conference featured everything from goats and puppies to puppy killers, a lot of agentic AI, and other stuff in between. I'm sure you've probably seen our coverage. If not, you can catch it on techstrong.tv. But we're going to look at some other things today. We're going to put RSA a little bit in the rearview mirror and move on. Let me introduce you to our gang members for today who are going to be discussing this with us. First of all, she sat while RSA was going on. She manned the ship, kept it steady and off the rocks. One of our editors here at Techstrong, Salagna Saha. Hello, Salagna. How are you? It's great to have you on, and thank you for manning the ship while all hands were on deck, it seemed like, doing things. Thank you. Also joining us, she's a new member. Well, this is not her first time on the gang, but she's a relatively new member of the gang. But she's a longtime Techstrong contributor, one of the most respected cyber journalists, I think, in the industry, our own Terry Robinson.
Hi
Terry.
there. How you doing?
Excellent. Excellent. It's great to have you on. And then joining Salagna, Terry, and myself, it looks like I'm going to guess he's back home in Austin, but he's been over chasing leprechauns in Ireland, among some other things. He's going to give us a report on it. A Futurum analyst, VI principal analyst, Guy Courier. Hey, Guy, good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be back. Good to be back in the States. Good to be back on the pod.
You didn't pick up
good to be starting a whole new week.
Yeah, it is good to start a fresh week. A fresh week, it's a fresh month.
Really. Well, yeah.
Right. Getting into summer. Anyway, let me lead things off with a recent article over on Techstrong AI about an AI agency showing that agentic AI, which, by the way, was all the rage at RSA. I mean, the lead of this survey is that 72% of orgs are using agentic AI. Salagna, what's this one about?
So according to a research firm, I don't remember the name for it, but they predicted that the growth is projected to be 45% CAGR from 2024 to 2030, which I think is a pretty steep climb, but not really unrealistic. It's like a magic wand in the hands of companies. And also, come to think of it, I cannot really think of one company that has not really joined the AI agentic fray lately. Like, think of Appian, Klarna, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Solo.io, Zoom. Pretty much everybody has rolled out some form of agentic AI-based solution lately. So I don't know about the adoption rate. I cannot be 100% sure. It definitely seems like it's on the peak, but I guess in a couple of years we'll come to see how much that has really caught on. There are obviously integration frictions, and adoption is not as easy as it sounds from these surveys. So we'll see, I guess.
Well, a lot of good insights from the survey, Salagna, but I feel like you're being a little kinder than I want to be. 72% of firms using something that they'd never heard of, actively using something they'd never heard of 6 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. I kind of feel like, and Alan, maybe you'd have the same perspective as me. This reminds me of cloudification when cloud came out. And I was working in industry at the time. I was working at Dell, and I was working on cloud solutions at Dell. And we would go and talk to customers, and they'd say, "Oh, we already have a cloud." And this is like 2012. And it turned out what they had was VMware. And I think that knowing I know what the word agent means. Agentic sounds like a marketing way of saying a agent. And when I use AI to do something, it's helping me out like an agent does. So I kind of feel like this was a little bit of the current market confusion, let's say, that I wasn't really aware of. But it may be a market confusion that when they're asked if they're using agentic AI, they just answer if they're using AI. That makes more sense. 45% CAGR for a tiny, tiny market that is extremely popular. Sure, that I can believe. I thought the insights there were a lot more on what they're doing, how they're doing it, having like half of them saying they have a dedicated budget for this sort of thing. I still think that's a dedicated budget for AI, not agentic AI. But nonetheless, it starts to make sense. You start to think about their concerns about security represented in the survey. Their concerns about how to integrate properly, how to manage the whole thing. That was helpful, but I don't know. Alan, maybe you disagree. Maybe you think 72% of firms actually are actively using AI agents right now. Do you?
No, I don't think there's that many AI agents. I think people are using agents, but they're not necessarily. I think people are using APIs. Excuse me. I think that's one of the things here. As I think, what is a AI agent or what is agentic AI is not being clearly defined, and I think people are looking at API and API connections, integrations as some form, perhaps, of agentic integration. And if you want to go that route, then I'd say, yeah, 72% are using APIs and integrating APIs. However, there's one other aspect that I'll point out, and I think Salagna, you said it early on, and that is the wish factor, the FOMO, right? No one wants to say, oh no, I'm not going to use the latest, greatest thing. I'm a dinosaur. I want to be obsolete by the time I'm 10. So there are, I do think most agencies envision using some sort of agentic AI. Slug, I don't know what you said the time frame was. Was it 2030 or 2028?
Yes, between 2024 and 2030.
So that's 5 years from now. Yeah, sure. To quote Frank Pentangeli in Godfather Part 2. Yeah, sure. But anyway, but today anyway, I'm sorry.
Say,
yes,
it does
Terry?
seem like that number is like sort of more aspirational than anything else. And this is one of those times that you wish you could actually see the survey and how the questions were asked and how the definitions may have been handed to that, population of people who were surveyed. I think that would make a big difference maybe in what we're seeing here.
Well, so I looked into this a little bit. I mean, it's Gravity, spelled with EE at the end instead of Y. They are an API, an AI-focused API management company. It was 300, professionals, IT professionals, not super well defined, at least in their press release about it. I have no doubt that these are folks who are knowledgeable and involved in some way. And I think that we would have to delve deeper, and we don't really need to do that or really question. We understand their motives, right? And Alan, your point about APIs and our point in general about this being about AI and about interactions between AI services and applications or agents of any kind. I mean, that's where we can get insights from this data. And that's in general what you want to do. You don't want to take the numbers necessarily like, at face value. They're more indicative than anything else of this sort of merge of the API economy with the existence of AI services. What's the API economy? The API economy is exposing services for collection and use by applications of all kinds through standard interfaces or through well understood interfaces. And why shouldn't a host of those services be AI services? They should be.
I agree. I agree 100%. Look, clearly though, we are going to have agentic AI. Agentic AI is going to be widespread. Agentic AI, a lot of people are going to use it. We need, so if we sat here in 2029 or 2030, in hindsight, I think we would say, oh yeah, these numbers are about right. They're even conservative. But as I sit here today, and this was another theme at RSA I spoke with a lot of people, is how much of it is really real today. And I think that's what we have to look at. Anyway, the article on this Solagna is up on techstrong.ai, I believe, right? And people can check it out there. The link's in the ticker. Until next time. Well, not until next time.
Until tomorrow when we have the next survey about AI, yes.
Well, we might have one later today, but you know what? Let's take a break and move on to our B block. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey, everyone. Before I left for RSA, I had a chance to sit down with my friend Patrick Dubois. If you're in DevOps, you know who Patrick is, right? Patrick's the man who gave DevOps its name. Also started the very first DevOps day. Some people call him the godfather of DevOps. But Patrick has been a leading light in the DevOps community since there was a DevOps community. And I've known Patrick since I started DevOps.com in 2014, 11, 12 years ago, 2013. And I know that for the last, let's say during COVID and immediately after COVID, Patrick's enthusiasm for continuing to work in DevOps was starting to wane. Not that he didn't believe in DevOps. He absolutely does. And, for all the right things that we believed in it to begin with. But he just felt like he was looking for the next thing already, right? People like Patrick are like that. And when AI came on the scene, man, it really got his juices flowing, right? Him, my friend John Willis, a lot of the DevOps community founders embraced AI and operational AI, as they called it. We had a hackathon down here with them, and it really reignited their passion for app dev and ops and what's going on in the software world. Now, I haven't spoken to Patrick in 6 or 8 months, so I had a chance to catch up with him. And he has hooked into a new community called AI Native Dev. And it's AI space native dev, one word. I think we may have it wrong on the ticker. I'll correct it. But it's AI Native Dev, one word, and it's AI Native Dev, I believe AI or .io. It's in the article. But this is a community of really some heavyweight people. The community was started by Guy Podjarny, who's the founder, CEO of Sneak. Guy Po is what most of us call Guy Po. And Simon Maple, another well-known developer. But it's attracted people like Patrick and some other really leading lights from the app dev community. And really what it's about promotes building software with AI at its core, using AI at its core. I have an article up on DevOps.com with it, and I have there's a short 15-minute video of Patrick and I on Techstrong TV. And then my latest DevOps chat episode is my full, 40-minute interview with Patrick on this. And I got to tell you, he is really pumped about what the potential here is. Guy, I don't know if you've had a chance to see this site yet or find out about this community and movement, but man, this sounds an awful lot like the early days of DevOps.
Well, yeah. So no, I didn't know anything about it. Not till the article appeared. I think it's your article after your conversation with Dubois. I don't know. I that I swing wildly from wild optimism to a deep dark pessimism. This is really
cynical.
Yeah. I try not to be, but they keep pulling me back in. So there's your Godfather reference for that one. Yeah. But it's hard not to be wildly optimistic. Let me not be wildly optimistic. Let me just say that this was necessary and needed. I don't know if AI native dev, which is actually 3 separate words, which is going to confuse everybody, just like it just confused you. But I pay attention to those things. I'm this kind of word geek type person, but this absolutely needs to happen. They're having a convention, or I don't know if it's digital or in person.
I believe it's virtual, the conference.
Yeah, it's probably virtual. Yeah. One of the talks, or maybe it was a related talk, was from one of their contributors, the title of which was something like the identity crisis in app dev right now. And I think that's really correct. It's like one of those things that, like, when someone says it, you're like, oh, of course, it's obvious. We used to, it's only 2 years ago or something that engineers were judged by lines of code. Now, all of a sudden, there's a way to generate thousands of lines of code. And now, everyone realized that was never correct to begin with. How do you, what is your role? And it's far more general than that, obviously, right? What's your role as a lawyer? What's your role as a doctor, as a human being, when you have one of these assistants, or as you like to call them, I think, tongue-in-cheek co-pilots, someone who's going to help you. And it's not a someone, I already did it. I did it myself. It's an AI. What are your personal, how are you supposed to judge yourself and judge others now as a developer? And I think setting a paradigm of some kind, just like cloud native is a paradigm, just like DevOps is a paradigm. None of these are technologies. None of these are necessarily tools. They're kind of cultural, but not just cultural, trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like now? I think this is absolutely right. And whether AI native dev is the thing that's going to catch on or not, it is definitely the right effort. And I can understand Dubois' enthusiasm for it. As a developer or coder, as someone supporting app development, has all of the needs in applications remain the same. They need to perform what they're supposed to perform at the right level of security and reliability and all that other sort of stuff, but not an infinite amount of either, because it depends on the purpose of the application and all those other sort of things. Balancing all of these things, that has not changed. And as far as I can tell, we are not at the stage where any app can be created in minutes at infinite reliability and security. So human beings need to remain involved. They will remain involved. And they have to learn how to use this new tool, which is extremely helpful, but also has dangers associated with it. They need to learn how to do that. And I think the idea behind AI native dev is spot on.
I agree. And here's the thing. And I've said this before too. AI has the potential to change civilization. The amount of, and maybe it's just because of the bubble that we live in, right? We're techie people. The amount of coverage, the amount of attention, the amount of buzz around what AI is specifically going to do regarding writing software is inordinately greater than I think the potential for AI on humanity in general. AI is going to do a lot more things than help us write better software. That being said, this group of folks right here is onto something, right? I think it's the reason why it does get this inordinate amount of coverage. I do think it is going to disrupt the entire software development ecosystem cycle world that we know of. It's going to, as I've said before, it's going to take the 30 or so million software developers or 40 million software developers in the world today and turn that into a 500 million, because everyone will be a software developer. But there will be best practices that emerge. There will be templates. There will be, it's just like everything else we've ever done in technology and software development. There's going to be structure and process and policy around these things. Best practices will emerge. I think this is a group that could really help it. I think with the kind of people involved here, you're going to start seeing them front and center. I'm stoked. I can't wait to see what comes out of this, to tell you the truth. I don't know,
Terry, bring the doubt, or Salagna, bring the doubt, bring the critique, bring the criticism.
I always have doubt. Honestly, I'm going to say straight off, I actually do think it's a good idea, and I'm kind of excited about it. But I do want to temper that because, there are issues with AI that that haven't been addressed in its current form, much less in like the development environment. But I'm interested in that sort of human element too, Guy, that you brought up. It seems like these guys, that's one of their guiding principles, is it not? That they have this sort of, I think they call it human oversight by design. And I think that's going to play an important role in how this spins out. But yeah, I'm hopeful, but I have my doubts.
And I will tell you something, like Guy Poe, and who's one of the founders here. He comes from a security background. So I will tell you that security is a paramount concern. But, I was in as I mentioned, I was in RSA. I was at the Techstrong DevOps Connect last Monday, a week ago. And the opening keynote was an amazing keynote. It was a panel, actually. And moderated but actively Saul Rashi, who formerly AWS AI luminary author, kind of moderated it. But we had the CISO from Anthropic. We had the CISO from OpenAI. We had the security tech lead from Meta Llama. And we had the CISO from JFrog, ML, Ops, all that stuff. So, 5 really bright people who are in on this. And I think it was Moran Ashkenazi, the CISO of JFrog, who said something that really struck me. She said, at this stage of the game anyway, AI can never be the pilot. AI must be the co-pilot.
Oh, that came from her. I just read your article on it, and I guess I didn't read it thoroughly enough.
Me, I never come up with anything original, Guy. I just hear it from other people. But yes, that was Moran.
Tyler, I want that clip, what he just said. That's our producer.
But it was Moran who said it. And the more you think about it, the more sense it makes. Yes, I don't think, not in my work, runway, we're going to just trust AI to just do these things without human oversight. I think you always are going to have human oversight, at least for the foreseeable future. And that AI's role will be as a co-pilot. So it's not that it's going to take jobs away per se. It's going to enhance the people doing those jobs. And I think that's a great kind of way of looking at it.
Yeah, but hang on just a second, because in the last segment, we were talking about agentic AI. And you're reminding me, this discussion is reminding me about Salesforce's activity here. um, uh, recently, it was just last week or something, they are exposing and building rapidly agentic AI platforms within Salesforce. Makes a lot of sense because so much of Salesforce and it's connected, applications inherent and its marketplace and all of this sort of stuff is on process, runs on processes. Why do I bring this up? Partly because it amuses me that they're talking about lambs over there, large action models as opposed to large language models. That's just kind of fun. Yeah. But no, the reason I'm bringing it up is, I mean, we're talking here, right, about Alan, about app dev, the use of AI in app dev, and how that changes the paradigm. And there's a community, a growing community looking at it, which is really good. But agents, I mean, we didn't define agents in the last segment, AI agents. They are defined by goals. They don't change their programming exactly, but they do modify the services that they use, the data sets that they use. They do things that current AI models that we use that they don't, the AI services we use don't do. They are more active, and that is a form of retreat from human oversight. And I don't see how that could not be it's not a full retreat. It's pulling back from it. There's things it does on its own, and it's intended to. Otherwise, it wouldn't be agentic. And apply that to coding. Apply that to, let's say, it doesn't have to be an application in production, like sort of an earlier environment, QA stage or something, where you have an agent that makes fixes or approves them or whatever it might be. There's a little bit of a rabbit hole here that can, I'm not going to say it's going to spin out of control exactly, but can get pulled out of that human oversight control. What was it, Terry? What was it's not unique to this community, this idea of human intervention that's in human oversight by design. They're going to have to figure out how you marry that with agentic as far as app dev goes. Don't tell me they're not going to apply AI agents to app dev. It's done already. I mean, it's as good as done. They're going to do it.
I think like upskilling the frontline workers is I mean, basically people who have like a solid grasp on the business goals, customer needs, and the technology on the whole. That can help fine-tune the AI models to eliminate the risks of error and oversight. That could possibly help. But the drawback with any decision-making system, whether it's just AI or agentic AI, definitely has big risks.
That's how you play it, Salagna. That's the danger here. We don't want something like, and it's not their intention, of course, AI native dev to almost provide an excuse framework or something, or permission, what do they call it, permission structure, for unleashing, or putting putting a rosy tint on something potentially dangerous. I haven't read all the reporting yet, Alan, on RSA. I'm very interested in what these folks working in the AI community and JFrog and so forth, how they're taking the security, how they're putting the security risks into practice. One of the areas I've investigated recently for Techstrong is around code security, application code security. This is sort of independent of AI to begin with. It's a security vulnerability area that is not particularly well understood, but is significant because it bypasses every security control you've ever heard of, because it's actually embedded in the code. And if you're not doing a code analysis, you might not notice it, and it's already inside. So it's past all the walls. It's operating inside the app with all the rights that the app has. So in a sense, this is using AI for code. If the AI itself gets compromised somehow and starts producing for the developer as the developer's co-pilot, producing risk, like what the vulnerabilities in the code because it's compromised. Will anybody detect it? Will that human intervention do it? No, the human intervention that will do it, is code analysis. It remains, the practices remain the same. The practices remain the same. I guess that's what I'm coming back down to. And so, Lagna, I think your comment highlights this, which is as you push the driving force farther out from the technical and into the business, that has such a compelling value to it that you can lose sight of how it needs to operate in order to be secure, safe, reliable.
Agreed. Look, I think the very core of the mission there at AI Native Dev actually is, Guy, to do exactly what you're saying, is to make it very similar to what you're doing now, right? I mean, you don't throw out the babies with the bathwater, hopefully, and you take your best practices and you try to, just as DevOps kind of extended Agile to a certain extent, right? This will extend other best practices. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and Guy, you're going to give us a trip report, or a little bit of what you saw while you were in Ireland and what we might expect out of it. You're watching.
It's not about Guinness. What I saw at a technology conference in Ireland.
If you want to add some of the Guinness and Jameson or whatever, I'm up for that too. But let's take a break. We'll be back. Guy's going to give us what he did on his vacation. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey, everyone. As I mentioned before the break, our friend Guy was out in Dublin, Ireland area last week attending a conference. He's going to tell us about it. And then specifically, there was one particular aspect where Google, pigs fly, Google, Meta, and Microsoft joining together on a project to increase server rack density, which, look, I think is a bit of a holy grail type for those of you not familiar in the data rack space. We've gotten to the point where you've got these GPU powered servers, and there's only so much electricity you can force into a set of space, a standard space.
Is there? I'm starting to wonder.
Well, unless we have a breakthrough, maybe. But Guy, go ahead, take it from there. Run with it.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I was at the Open Compute Project Foundation, typically called OCP. I was at their European Summit. The two themes there, for the most part, almost exclusively, actually, did not have to do directly with what you're talking about, Alan, but I'm going to get to that in a second. The two themes being, number one, AI, big surprise. No surprise at all that AI was a huge theme there. And the other being power and cooling in particular. Cooling was all over that show. It was all over the global summit last year, but in Europe in particular, it's especially important where space tends to be at a premium. So you're packing a whole lot of systems and compute and such like. When it comes to AI or high performance computing, you're packing them into a data center, you're packing them onto a rack. But yes, let's get to the Google, Meta, Microsoft story here. I'm just going to cut straight to the big story. We're talking about a 1 megawatt capacity at up to 800 volts of direct current on a single 48 unit rack. Now, 48 units is a lot of units. 42 is typical, but the OCP, so OCP, Open Compute Project, right? These are all open standards. That's the whole purpose of it. Open standards for data center and rack and infrastructure and all that other sort of stuff so that they work together well, so that vendors can build their components or servers or whatever they're going to build, including for really high, like really powerful, dense, et cetera, systems to host AI or the latest in high performance computing workloads, right? That's what Open Compute is. Open Compute OCP is for. So actually, Meta already has a 0.5 megawatt rack right now that it's either in production or about to be in production, and they're simply contributing that standard to what's called Project Mount Diablo. And that'll be out in a month, and they're going to call that version 0.5, because guess what, folks? Version 1 is probably going to be that 1 megawatt, 800 volt rack. It's a lot of power. Your average dense rack right now in a more average data center, which let's face it, like a lot of the cloud providers, Google and everybody else, they're not filled with, high kilowatt racks. But their typical rack, which is very dense, is 20 kilowatts, 35 kilowatts, actually, I should say, is like that. So we're talking like something like 40x that size. You're talking about packing a lot of compute. I mean, by my calculations, sort of the cutting edge right now of accelerators, GPUs, is 1,200 watts per GPU, which is a lot. That's a lot already. That is a lot. That's a lot of watts. And with a megawatt on a rack, you could put like a couple dozen of those, not on the rack, but a couple dozen of those accelerators on just one sled in the rack. They're building, this reminds me, we had a conversation about this. I think it was you, Alan, about Akamai way back in the day. Way back during the dot-com bubble when Akamai came out, and they said, "Okay, we're just gonna," or maybe it was a different company. We're gonna build a whole lot of fiber. We're gonna spread fiber all around the world, and it's level 3. That's right, level 3, and it's dark fiber. It's gonna be dark fiber. What does dark fiber mean? It's not even gonna be used because they expected demand to go way up, and eventually it did. Level 3 had its problems because it was managing a whole lot of fiber that wasn't being used. That's probably not going to be the case here. 1 megawatt, can I say it any better? I mean, help me out. That's a lot of power in one rack, of which there would be 40 or 80 in a typical data center in Europe, I mean, because there's much bigger data centers, including being built in Europe. I'm just trying to put this in context. This is the vision that they have, and the fact that they are contributing this as open specifications. Google's contribution is something called Deschutes, which is their cooling technology. I think it's a single-phase cooling, might be two-phase, because they are trying to address this problem themselves. When you have that much wattage and power all happening in such a small place, the only option is direct liquid cooling, which means little tubes of liquid running around inside these servers, transferring heat and bringing it like to the outside. And it being Europe, there's sustainability associated with this. So a lot of these cooling systems are now supplying heat to whatever the local village or city or something that then doesn't have to pay for heating in the winter. Of course, there's delivery of that much power in the first place to the data center, which is where, at least in the States, or I think it's in the States, where they're talking about building nuclear plants or like whatever else. This is a problem with a lot of different elements to it. But if you can't actually get the power to the accelerators on the rack, in short, I think a lot of what's going on, what was happening at OCP and what I'm seeing at these conferences doesn't get the headlines. It's not the 1 megawatt rack, even though, I mean, I just can't stop talking about it. That's really incredible. It's not the launch of a broad AI enablement initiative by OCP so that you can have 100% open standards around AI clusters and hosting AI. There's also an efficiency movement that does not get the headlines in how to use existing infrastructure or existing technologies and rack capabilities and so forth more efficiently to do the same thing with less. That's what I'm hoping to see more of in the next year or two. And that's a reason to go to Europe because the general approach to AI so far, I mean, Solagna, I know you've seen this too, probably you too, Terry. The general approach is just to throw more and more and bigger resources at it. And this 1 megawatt rack is an example of that. But the other thing is to try and do it smarter. And I saw that too. Memory encryption is just one example. I'll probably think of a couple others. This discussion continues where it's packing bigger models into smaller spaces closer to the processor. And for that, you actually wind up needing less power rather than more. There's also a new kind of magnetic memory called MRAM, magnetic-based memory called MRAM, which is a bit of a tweener memory in the sense that it can be right close to the processor, or actually inside the processor, but take the place of DRAM 5, which is outside the processor and has a slower connection. And so this MRAM is new, but being able to put it in there and do more with that CPU or that GPU that is otherwise at a slower clock speed and not as dense and doesn't need as much power. That's the other approach. And that was really interesting to see at OCP in EMEA and not something that gets talked about quite as much. So that's my initial report.
Yep. So, Guy, I was at SUSECon at least a month, maybe a month and a half ago. One of SUSE's key data center partners presented there. They were from Australia. I think it's called Aussie Servers or something like that is the name of the company. And it wasn't their CEO, it was like their CTO, I believe, did a tremendous presentation on server density and the limits. There's two limits you run into. One is cooling and one is power. Cooling, he said, if you're not using liquid cooling, you're just not getting into the major leagues today, right? You must use liquid cooling. Air cooling alone isn't going to do it. But from the power point of view, I forgot if he said it was 1 meg or 1.5. I mean, like theoretical limits to a full rack, just how much you could bring in there. And you also got to remember that that's just one rack, Guy.
I haven't forgotten. Yeah.
It's a whole data center, right? Of how many racks. And so, short of having a flux capacitor, behind each rack, Dr. Brown is spinning it up or something with Marty McFly. How do you pump that much juice into a data center to power 60 racks of 1 megabit each?
Well, let's see. How do they do it in Back to the Future? A lightning bolt and a cable running from a clock tower?
Right. You need to hook up to the clock tower. Though in Back to the Future 3, if you remember, they did have a new improved flux capacitor, and you could just put like posts and stuff in. Yeah. And it ran that. But I mean, seriously, when you're talking about a $2 trillion $2 trillion with a T, $2 trillion investment around the world over the next, 5 years into AI data center construction. Are we going to have the juice to run all these things? Or are we just going to have white elephants? Now, I think this 1 megabit a rack thing is a noble thing. And I do, Guy, agree with you that doing this in an open source kind of model will allow, companies who are otherwise competitors, to cooperatively, collaborate here and bring other people in. But Don, before you go spend $2 trillion, I probably want to figure this out. That's just me though. Fiscal conservative. What can I say? Um,
I mean, a bit, I think it's a bit ironical that companies talk about sustainable thermal design and lowering energy footprint, but in the same breath, they're also talking about greater power delivery. Like, I think that kind of like those two are contradictory things. So yeah, I understand that AI/ML workloads would require more than, like Google says that it will require more than 500 kilowatt per rack before 2030, and it's no surprise that they're already working towards that. But the industry,
Well, they already have it. So Meta already has a 500 kilowatt rack.
yeah, I mean, yeah, moving to the 1 megawatt units, yeah. So I think like the industry as a whole, like all of the hardware industry, whether it's GPUs, SSDs, networking gears, racks, what have you, they're all focused on delivering better barrel thermal design, and there's also the push for densification. So it'll at the same time, if they're going to jack up the power delivery capabilities of these designs, the data centers at the end of the day will end up consuming a whole lot more power and energy, and emissions will ultimately go up. So I I don't know where this is actually headed.
I don't know if it was Europe particularly. I think it to some degree it was, but that very question Solagna was on the main stage at the opening keynote on the first day of the conference was, um, and I think it might have been the head of the OCP uh, saying it himself, George. Remember his last name. Sorry, at the moment, but there was that very question: rapid progress in AI and improving data center and IT, capacity. Is that in direct conflict with sustainability goals? This is. I mean, it's the law of the land across the EU and across Europe. So they're looking at it. They're attentive to it.
Yeah. Well,
Terry, I
I
think
was just gonna
you were going to
yeah, I was just
comment.
gonna say, I mean, it kind of blows the sustainability thing out of the water a bit, that argument, but also I'm kind of trying to track what's going on in my home state of Louisiana, right? Because Meta has a huge data center that they're building there in a parish in Northeast Louisiana, and this idea of power, has come up a number of times, and who's paying for it, how much it's gonna take, I mean, it's there Mike Johnson has been, pumping it a lot, uh, sort of publicly. But in the discussions down there, there are a lot of concerns and questions, but also I can't help but thinking, I mean, that state is not one that's so big on the environment and sustainability and whatever. So maybe it's actually the perfect place to put something like this because, you know,
yeah, they could open it next door to a
right?
refinery, and
Have the best or the worst of both.
Well,
Listen,
that's the
there's a
oil
there's
and
there's
gas
a
industry is
problem with it.
salivating down there,
There's a
for this, so
you know, there's a problem with this though, and that is data gravity. The pipes are not big enough for the low enough latency required for a service to be in Louisiana. I mean, I think that would be like the easy button for this whole industry is forget Louisiana, how about the global south? How about, Central America, Northern South America, Africa? There's lots of places where we can just dump, all of these low sustainability, data centers, what have you, if it weren't for the fact that the data needs to get there and the data needs to get back and the services need to be provided reliably. That's why space is an issue in some parts of the world, not everywhere, not in Australia, but certainly in some parts of Europe, because they want to put these data centers and all this power and everything really close to major population centers.
agreed. Agreed. Guys, what started out was going to be a nice short Monday tech field day. Nice short Monday Techstrong Gang has run a little overtime, so I'm afraid I have to pull us out here so we can play all of the great RSA content we have from last week, as well as some other great content on Techstrong TV. Also, a quick announcement. We are sort of beta testing our Techstrong TV OCC app. So I believe you can get it in the iOS and Google Play Store. I think you can also get it on the Apple TV app store, as well as the Roku store, and I think Amazon Fire. Not everything is up to date. A lot of the tech field days are, because our tech field day team was in charge of uploading videos, and I guess they focused on tech field day. But there's Techstrong Gangs only up through the end of the year, for instance. But we will be uploading our entire catalog, and not just Techstrong. We'll have 6.5 Media, we'll have Tech Field Day and future content up there as well. So if you get a chance, do download the app. Registration is optional. We'd love for you to register. We have big plans going forward for those people who we're not looking for money, but those people who do subscribe, will keep you in the know and get you some premium content. But you don't have to register to enjoy it, and we'd love your feedback on it. We know it's a better and it's a work in progress, but do check it out. Until tomorrow, though, Guy, Terry, Salagna, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Techstrong TV. I'm Alan Schimmel. We're out.